Hello and welcome to Game Time, the Indian Express's sports podcast. This is your host Amit Kamath, and joining me today, as always, is my co-host Mihir Vasavda. This week, we are going to talk about an Indian success story in the sport of chess. But before we do, I'd like to make an early segue into India's impact in the sport of 64 squares. Now Mihir, last month, when Hikaru Nakamura beat Magnus Carlsen to win the Bullet Chess Championship, there was an Indian link to the success. Can you guess what it is?
I don't know anything about the championship. I know who Hikaru Nakamura is. And the only reason I know the answer to this question is because it just came again and again on my timeline. जैसे कि every time होता है जब भी कुछ Indian soft power चीजें जब भी highlight होती है ना, so एक जो fake sense of pride जो हम में आ जाती है on social media, उस वजह से the clip was retweeted numerous number of times and it landed on my timeline. So I know the answer and it is the song Chaiya Chaiya.
Absolutely. So for those of you who have been on a social media hiatus for the last month or so, when Magnus Carlsen was beaten by Hikaru Nakamura in the Bullet Chess Championship, Hikaru Nakamura was also live streaming the whole thing, and there was music blaring in the backgrounds. And the song that he took inspiration from, in a way, was the Shah Rukh Khan, Malaika Arora star.
You're just like introducing the song in a terrible way. It's just the A.R. Rahman hit. That's it. और कुछ बोलने की जरूरत नहीं. Or maybe Shah Rukh Khan dancing on the roof of the train, and Hikaru Nakamura wasn't really dancing on the roof of the train.
He did try singing though. He did try singing, although he could not get anywhere further than Chaiya Chaiya. But the song was good enough for him to actually win the title. Now, I think we've overstretched this segue already. Way too much, yes. So let's talk about something that Indians should actually take pride in. When the World Chess Championship classical ratings are published later this month, there is a very healthy possibility that a 17-year-old boy, Gukesh Dommaraju from Chennai, is going to be the country's top-rated chess player, overhauling Viswanathan Anand, who has been at the top of the top Indian chess player for the last 36 years.
Our entire lifetime, without giving away our age, I think, Amit. And just when we think of it like that, na, चलो यार, मैं born हुआ 87 में, तब से लेकर आज तक Anand has been synonymous with chess for majority Indians. So the idea that someone is going to surpass Anand as India's number one ranked chess player, the humongous nature of this occasion, I think वो अब तक sink in नहीं हो रहा है काफी लोगों में. Maybe we'll talk about it differently 20 years later, but this is a massive moment in Indian chess, I guess.
Absolutely. It is one of those torch exchanging hands.
Passing the baton कहते हैं उसे.
Whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's one of those moments and we are still struggling to sum it up. Forget, contextualizing it.
Yeah, true. And it's interesting because there are just multiple aspects to this, Amit. I mean, we'll, of course, one by one come to it. But थोड़ा सा हम जो बाद में detail में discuss करने वाले हैं, I want to kind of touch upon it right now because a year ago, right, around this time last year, if we were to talk about Indian chess and if we go back to our previous Game Time episodes, I'm sure you'll find in our timeline that we've spoken about Pragnananda in a similar vein. Like, for me, it was almost like Pragnananda was the next best Indian thing in terms of rankings after Anand. And suddenly then Gukesh has appeared from nowhere, मैं नहीं कहूँगा, but for a layman like me who doesn't really follow chess, he appeared from nowhere. And the last 12 months, he's zoomed incredibly and he's now the country's top ranked player. So that in itself is a very fascinating angle, very fascinating story for me. But I'm also trying to imagine, कि for Gukesh, how would this be? Because he's still like very young. He wasn't even born when Anand started playing and Anand was dominating the chess scene, not just in India, everywhere.
We weren't even born when Anand started playing, right?
Yeah. So for someone like Gukesh to now surpass Anand, just how would that be? You've spoken to both. You've spoken to Anand as well as Gukesh. What's their rapport? What's their relationship is like?
Now, the two guys have a very easygoing relationship, and it's something that kind of distinguishes them from the other. So we've seen in Indian sport how whenever there's an up-and-comer athlete and there is a established superstar, there is always that edge between them. There's always that the top guy always thinks that the second person has not earned his stripes. There'll always be that, hesitancy.
Hierarchy.
Yeah, there's always that hesitancy. But with Gukesh and Anand, it's not been so. Anand is somebody who's mentored Gukesh. Gukesh is one of those prodigies who's training at Anand's academy, Vaka. So they have that easygoing relationship. The last time, actually the first time they met each other across a chessboard was last month. Where the two met in the Super United Rapid and Blitz tournament in Zagreb.
एक तो ये chess tournaments के names यार.
I mean, yeah. So these two guys met each other, and it was one of those where Anand talks about as seeing that slight distance from Gukesh for the first time ever. Here's what Anand told us.
In Zagreb, earlier this month, I got to play against him. And then I saw a slightly newer side of him where he looked very cold, very distant, but I realized that he was really trying to focus before the game. It's possible he's done this before, but it stood out for me because it's the first time I sat down to face him. So that's something that I noticed recently.
All right, so you heard Anand talk about how he got this cold, distant vibe from a 17-year-old kid who is his mentee. But the other thing is, what happened at the end of that contest is Gukesh ends up beating Anand, and the two of them end up sharing a very nice, warm conversation at the end of the game. Gukesh and Anand are somebody who've shared like a very easygoing rapport. Let's hear about that conversation. Let's hear about their equation in their own words.
He has been my idol since the time I started playing chess. One of the prominent reasons why I started playing chess, actually. So, yeah, I mean, overtaking him would be something that would be really memorable for me. But I also want to add that no matter like how many Indians, get to the next level, enter the candidates, maybe even the world become the world champion, Anand sir will always be, the special one because he started everything, and without him, none of this would be even possible to imagine. So, no matter what, he will always be the greatest Indian chess player ever.
It's a fascinating quote, Amit, because, it in a way also captures emotions of a lot of us. Of course, with all due respect, Gukesh is going to be India's number one. He's like the anointed prince of Indian chess. But Anand will always have a special place in everyone's heart and lives. But it's also interesting because when we go back further in time, we spoke about the Zagreb meeting between the two. But the first time Gukesh met Anand, the first few times, I think he was 8 or 9 years old. I was reading a draft that you've written of a story that's yet to be published. We're waiting for the right time for it to go up. But it's a fascinating story because it was at a school felicitation function where Anand had gone. And it was first time Gukesh saw him up close. So that was the first time at his school that Gukesh ended up meeting Anand. But there have been quite a few moments. That was the first big moment for Gukesh, a defining one. The second moment actually left a lasting impression, and that was last year when Gukesh was still, again, to kind of give some perspective, some context, Gukesh was still not among the highest rated Indian chess players. And here he was at the Olympiad slaying his opponents, and that's when he again had the second moment with Anand. What was that, Amit?
So just to lay out some context, at the Olympiad, India, because they were hosting it at Chennai, they got to enter two teams, India 1 and India 2. Now, the India 1 team had a bunch of players who had been grandmasters for a while. But the India 2 team was a team with a lot of these young superstars, including Gukesh, Pragyananda, and so on. Now, Gukesh in that tournament goes on this giant killing run where he beats all of his first 8 opponents. In the 9th game is when he finally has a draw. But in the 10th game, India are playing Uzbekistan, and Gukesh starts off very well against Nadirbek Abdusattorov, who's one of the top prodigies from Uzbekistan. Now, what happens in that game is that while Gukesh is playing against Nadirbek, he is leading from the start. He's in a good position from the start. Even if they had drawn that game, India would have almost virtually assured themselves of a team gold. But Gukesh refuses a draw at one point from his rival, presses on, makes a blunder, and ends up losing. When he does lose, he realizes that, he's cost the team an almost certain gold, because at that point, Uzbekistan were trailing, but because of the defeat, there is a draw and Uzbekistan inch ahead. So eventually, after that defeat, India do end up winning a bronze medal. Now, that's the sort of defeat that kind of, can leave you scarred for life if it's left unattended. Anand is somebody who realizes this. So Anand walks up to him, tells him that, if you want to talk, let's have a conversation. I'm here for it. Here's Anand talking to us about what that moment was like.
Gukesh had a sensational performance until that point. And while even after losing to Noterbeck, it was, one of the top performances in Olympiad history, he had a winning position the whole game. And on top of that, had he won, he would have almost practically clinched first place for the India B or India 2 team. And so it's hard to describe just how much pain such a game can cause to you. He first didn't manage to make progress with his advantage. Then I think he forgot also to stop. He could have taken a draw at almost any moment, and he would have clinched the Olympiad for the team because Pragnananda had already won. But, sometimes you just forget where you are, and he lost. So I was sure that he would feel depressed. I mean, I've had games like this where there's a lot riding on it, and then I blow it. So I know what it does to you. And so I thought he must be going through the same thing. Let me go there and try to cheer him up. At least keep talking to him so he is not sitting there just thinking about this.
Now, Mihir, one of the things that stood out for me is that this conversation that Anand has with Gukesh, right? When I spoke to Gukesh, he told me that this conversation lasted, it felt to him around 1 hour, 30 minutes or maybe 2 hours. When I asked Anand about it, Anand said that this conversation lasted only 15 minutes and it kind of ended because Gukesh was successful in assuring him that he was fine. And Anand says that, I cannot insist to some player that he's not fine when he's insisting that he's fine. So they end up going down to the hotel lobby and actually playing a game of table tennis.
Wow.
So it's just very reflective upon what state the two players were in at that moment, at that point in time.
It's just fascinating over here as well. I mean, at the start of the episode, you mentioned ki kaise Anand went out of the way to help Gukesh, right? He didn't have that ego or that hesitancy or whatever you may call it of being a number one, helping a guy who would eventually go in and take his position. But this is like the biggest testimony to Anand's large-heartedness in a way. Because yaar, Anand ko वैसे तो कोई ज़रूरत नहीं थी. He could have, like big players, like legends usually do, he could have just sat and given like 100 remarks on what Gukesh did wrong and blah, blah, blah. Like it happens in most of the sports. But he recognizes the mindset of this kid. And he chooses to go and mentor him, guide him totally by himself. Gukesh hadn't reached out to him. So I think that speaks a lot of Anand's mentality. It also speaks a lot on Gukesh's part. Because he was ready to absorb whatever Anand was saying. And I can't imagine how thrilling it would be कि आप एक तरह से देख रहे हो तो Olympiad में you've gone through a tough match and then half an hour later you're just playing a game of TT with Anand in a lobby. I mean, if something like that would have happened to me where I've kind of, not had a good day in office, and then my idol comes and takes me to a game of TT, I would be like, कोई तो दूसरे planet पे रहता मैं.
And well, you can argue that Gukesh has reached that different planet, the one inhabited with the top 10 players in the world. Because let us just remind our listeners that we are recording this on a Thursday where Gukesh is yet to play his second game in the second round of the FIDE World Cup against Mistradin Iskandrov. If he wins the second game, he will assure himself as the top-ranked Indian chess player when the rankings are announced at the end of this month. Right now, because he's won the first game on Wednesday, he's 0.6 points behind Anand. So there's still that uncertainty that will he, won't he? But then since Anand is somebody who likes to call himself semi-retired, there is a very healthy chance that in the coming, if not today, in the next few months, this is definitely going to happen. So, I mean, we are not jumping the gun here. But yeah, so when this moment comes, it's a crazy, the words like meteoric even sum up this rise of Gukesh, because as you mentioned that in April of 2022 was the first time he actually broke into, the world's top 100. And here we are already talking about him breaking into world top 10 and actually going past Anand, who's held that spot since 1986.
No, so that's what I'm very curious to understand, because I mean, for those of us who might not be so clued into the normal activities that go on in Indian chess, I mean, Indian chess has been going through this crazy phase where for me, it's the most exciting place in chess world right now, India, because you've got this host of young chess players who everyone is expecting that one of them will eventually challenge a Carlsen or a Nepo or a Ding for the world title someday soon. If not the next candidates, then the one after that. But hone wala. And this time last year, we were talking about the likes of Pragnananda, Arjun Arigasi, Nihal Sarin, these all young players who were trying to emulate the seniors who'd achieved a lot of things before them. My bad, perhaps I wasn't too aware of what was happening in chess world, but मुझे पता था कि Gukesh existed back then, but I just didn't realize कि कितना बड़ा level पे वो जाएगा. It just happened during the Olympiad. But Amit, you've observed chess more closely, you've followed more closely than I have. So what is it about Gukesh जिसकी वजह से he's climbed up so many places, and it's not just about ranks, it's about getting those important wins, right? So what's stood out for him compared to the all other young chess players from India?
A couple of things that separate him. You spoke about that bunch of other chess players, other teenage prodigies like Pragnananda, Arjun Ergyasi, or even Nihal Sarin. Now, the most interesting point about this bunch is all these three guys all became grandmasters in 2018, whereas Gukesh was somebody who became a grandmaster 1 year later in 2019. But despite that, just before the pandemic, the year of the pandemic, somebody who was playing as many as 230 games every year. Now that's a crazy amount of chess to play. He's somebody who's playing very, very fast, playing as many tournaments as he can. And then the pandemic hits. And when the pandemic hits, a lot of his peers are actually going and playing online chess for fun. They are on these chess portals doing chess as recreational stuff. Gukesh is slightly different. Gukesh is somebody who does not like online chess so much. Initially, he does not like playing rapid or blitz events. He's a classical chess person, and he likes to play his opponents face to face over the board. So for him, it's a little bit tough. Now, what is also very, very remarkably different about him than the other prodigies is that till the pandemic hits, he's not actually ever used a chess engine, because he and his trainer Vishnu have this thing in their mind that, we will only use a chess engine when we absolutely need him to use it, because otherwise, whatever theories we have, he's going into a competition, he will put it across on the board while he's playing live chess. So in the pandemic, because he also gets accepted in the Vaka Academy that Anand runs, there they are running a lot of chess training sessions on the computers. So that is when his trainer decides, okay, now I think because there are no competitions for you to be running your theories in, we should start working with a chess engine. Now, when I asked Vishnu, his trainer, whether that is slightly unusual, he said it's highly unusual, because right now there are chess players who are 8 and 9 years of age who are actually using chess engines. And here is a kid who was, I think he was 14 or 15 back in 2022 when he was still happily unaware. I think he was 16, I think. Yeah, so he was still not bothering to, with chess engines. So that is one thing that separates him, obviously. Now, the second thing that kind of separates Gukesh is, as Vishnu says, that he is a little too mature for his age, right? When Vishnu first met Gukesh in June 2017, when Gukesh had come to him for a training camp the first time, he remembers thinking that, this kid is not as playful as the others. He was always looking for a way forward. He was not looking at chess and thinking that, I'm going to just play. He came with that crazy focus. And that is what shone through in the pandemic. In the pandemic, I think there was this quote from Vladimir Kramnik. It's a very throwaway quote. He said that, when the pandemic ends, we'll see which player has kind of used the pandemic well and which players have been wasting their time. Now, for Gukesh, he kind of took that as a mantra. He clung to that. He was like, I'm not going to play too many chess tournaments. Like, he did play a couple of chess tournaments, but let's say he did that slightly grudgingly. He did that because he knew that, this is the end goal. I need to be ready for the time when the world opens up again. Over the board chess tournaments are back again. And that's when I will show how much I have learned. I have not wasted as Kramnik would say, he's not wasted away the pandemic. Let's hear from Gukesh also about this phase and how this spurt kind of surprised him as well.
Before the lockdown, let's say I was just a normal grandmaster. Okay, I was a young grandmaster, but I wasn't anything too special, I would say. I was rated around 25-50, playing good tournaments from time to time. But this 2021, 2022, this 2 years really changed my career, and I think I really made a huge leap. And I think that's because of the work that I put in the lockdown. And right now I think I'm doing quite well, and I actually couldn't imagine being here before the lockdown. So things have really gone very well for me.
Right. So, I mean, it's a fascinating journey. It's, I think, just the beginning of it. But Amit, like we've seen with a lot of junior players, right? It starts off like ekdam zoom karke chale jate aage, and then it comes the challenging bit. Now, what's the biggest challenge for Gukesh to stay there? It's one thing to surpass Anand and become India's top ranked player. What's needed to be done to stay there and even get better than that?
Right. Now, I think because Gukesh likes to play so many over-the-board face-to-face tournaments, it will be slightly easier for him. He set himself 2 targets, actually, for this year, 2023. And surprisingly, none of them involved Vishy Anand, right? His target was to break into the top 10 of the FIDE rankings, which he's already achieved after his first win on Wednesday in the FIDE World Cup. The second target that he'd set himself is to ensure that he makes the cut for the candidates tournament. Now, the candidates tournament is a tournament to decide who plays the reigning world champion. Now, for Gukesh, he already has, that maturity to know that maybe he's not yet ready to play in the world championship cycle. But breaking into the candidates tournament at the age of 17 is something that can make him ready for the future challenges, make him ready. And obviously, he's always going to have this crazy lot, this 82 other grandmasters from the country to help him whenever he needs it, especially the country's first grandmaster. So I think to sum up, we should allow Vishy Anand, the country's first grandmaster and the 5-time world champion, who's just very close to becoming the second ranked grandmaster in the country, to have the last word.
Over the last year and a half, Gukesh has convinced not only me, but many people of his talent for chess. I had also gotten to see his commitment, his passion, let's say really dedication, and bordering fanaticism. He's someone who really likes to work and study the game a lot, looks forward to all his tournaments, just brings very, very good attitude to the game. I will say that I was convinced he has the potential, but now I'm seeing that more and more of the components, the things he will need. I mentioned his attitude, his determination, even his willingness to experiment and take risks and challenge every player. He's very, very courageous also. So did I know he's going to overtake? I didn't spend that much time thinking about it, but I was convinced. Of course, it's inevitable. It's going to happen sooner or later. And right now, Gukesh is the closest to making it happen. On top of that, I think he has even more potential, and I'm very excited to see how high he can go. He's one of the easiest bets to make, easiest persons to bet on. So yes, I think right now he's the favorite, and let's see when it happens, actually.
You were listening to Express Sports by the Indian Express. This week's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.